Okay, I'm really surprised that I haven't come across this before. So yesterday I was looking through some old footage from... So interesting reading people's comments and how they found it really confusing. Yeah, these were the comments that I was looking at. This so this is, she says it's now been 3 days since 4 Idaho. So it says the 16th here. So yeah, 3 days. That is 3. Because tell I was a teacher, can't you? My amazing math skills. Yeah, so interesting reading the comments. So the first comment is, something's not adding up. How can they say there's no danger to the public? Prayers to everyone. Okay. And then, so it's something further on but I'm going to read these as well. Something further on that I'm alluding to, but I want to just read a couple of these anyway. It was a targeted attack. They said in this clip, not too often a crime of passion is a quadruple murder with no sign of a suspect or weapon. 4 people versus a knife. You would think 1 or 2 would run off while you're stabbing their homies to death. But hey, what do I know? Okay. So this is the person who says some interesting things. Nerdo Calypse 7466. Then Edmundo Oliver says they were sleeping. And Jacob Riffle, to make people feel safe, if that's supposed to say. That's, they're saying that to make people feel safe. A shark bait. It was a targeted attack and all targets are dead. They're no threat to anyone else. Could still be a threat if other students are targets too. It seems the cops know more and just aren't releasing. They're probably hoping to not make dude run by releasing only pieces of what they know. And then Nerdo Calypse is referring back to what he said, what Edmundo Oliver said here. They were sleeping, okay? And Nerdo Calypse says, good point, they are, in inverted commas, sleeping like the people on Kensington do, right? Okay, so this on Kensington. But on Kensington, I think he's talking about on Kensington Avenue, which is in Philadelphia, and it's like a bit like Skid Row, right? And people are obviously, there's a lot of people off their faces in some way or another. I think that's what he's implying. So I'm like looking into it and like, what is he talking about? I have actually asked him, assuming it's a he, obviously may not be. I do think that's probably what he was alluding to. But then what I came across was this. And there were 6 family members stabbed in their sleep. I'm putting my fingers in inverted commas here. In their sleep in Kensington. Kensington is in Philadelphia, right? But it happened... Now, I think it happened on the 11th, let me just say, of February 2022. Oh, sorry, I'm thinking 2023, my bad. Oh, right, okay, so this had already happened. No, I've just been thinking it's 2020. This was 2023 all the time since I saw it yesterday. No, 2022, so it already happened. So he could have been talking about this, but he said on Kensington, which makes it sound like he's talking about a street. And let me just show you Kensington Avenue. If you're not familiar with it, you might be. It might be more well known than I realise. Kensington Avenue. What is Kensington Avenue famous for? Wow. drugs, basically. Over time, black and Hispanic street dealers took over larger portions of the drug trade, especially heroin. This is like a big history of it, so it's not necessarily exactly as it is now. Opioid crisis. So yeah, all references to that. So this is interesting. That's interesting. Oh God, it just started raining. I'm out with the dog. I'm under trees, so if I'm going to tell you something else that's interesting, but let's look at the article first. So, officials announced Monday an arrest and charges against a man accused of stabbing 6 family members as they slept inside of their Kensington home Friday morning. So Thursday night into Friday morning. Mind you, I think all victims, this is very strange, this whole family living in this house, right? They're all adults. I'm pretty sure there's no kids, and there's 6 family members living in, I suppose it's not out of the realms of possibility, but when I read family, I didn't expect them. Oh, my dog's dumping in the distance. Let me find. I'll be back. Job done. Lovely job. Yeah, I'll carry on. Not quite sure where I was. Excuse me, got a frog in my throat. Yeah, so Philadelphia police arrested a man identified as 30-year-old Jamal Holmes. Right, he's a family member of the 300 block of North Front Street. Holmes was arrested on Friday shortly after police responded to the scene. Holmes has been charged with numerous counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault, simple assault, and related offences. But there were 2 knives used, and so there are cases where they leave somebody alive, possibly the target themselves, and kill the rest of the people. Or maybe in the case of the Idaho 4, if this was the case, not all of the rest of the people, but maybe they didn't know about all people in the house. They might not have known Bethany was there. But the reason being, to stitch that person up, basically, so that person, not only have they lost all their friends or loved ones, but they're also basically being framed for it. What better way to do it? I'm not saying that this is the case here, but this could be the case here. But the other thing is, with this fentanyl crisis, I've got a little clip that on a podcast called The Presumption podcast, it's on YouTube. They have a guy on. He's an author, and he wrote a book called The Least of Us, right? And he's written one before that. It's got the word dream in it, and I can't remember the rest of it. And that's basically about the fentanyl crisis. And this book sort of carries on from there, but I can't remember. It's basically is about the fentanyl crisis, but it's got slightly different objective to it. And it's intriguing that I'm going to find the clip now,
people using what they think is cocaine or heroin or pot, even I've heard could be laced with fentanyl, and then they die from the fentanyl that's laced. Does that make sense?
Yeah, both. You find both very frequently, and part of it is,
this isn't the video, but this is interesting. Anywho,
because the underworld has figured out that if you put fentanyl into meth, cocaine, marijuana, and now, of course, coming out of Mexico in the last several years, just scandalous quantities of fake pills that look like a Percocet or look like an oxycodone generic or whatever, a Xanax bar, but all contain nothing but fentanyl. Very quickly, you will get a fentanyl addict from someone who thinks she's buying a Xanax bar and wants to calm her anxiety because of COVID, being cooped up too long or whatever. On the other hand, there are many people who have now survived their first contacts with fentanyl. It happens. It's very common to survive the first and begin but very quickly develop an addiction to it. The body absolutely needs it. They'd say that he preferred fentanyl to. I don't think the verb prefer is the one anymore. At that point, it's you have to have it.
It's not a choice.
I was looking for fentanyl, couldn't find any, so I guess I'll just take some coffee.
I know.
I just want to chip in there as well that I was an opioid addict previously, and so I can testify to it's not a matter of preferring, it's a matter of having to have it. I didn't even realise I was an addict until I was an addict. I was taking painkillers, strong painkillers, and it wasn't until one day I'd run out and I knew I was taking too much, but I didn't, and I kind of knew I was feeling I needed them. So I suppose I did kind of know that I was addicted, but what solidified it for me was that when I ran out of them, I thought I had the flu, and I was like, I can't move kind of thing. And then I realised that once I got my medication, it was withdrawal symptoms. It was like I couldn't move kind of thing. It was horrendous, the sweating and everything. That was, I ended up in ICU. And, I don't look down on people who have addiction, because I know I have quite an addictive personality, and it's something that doesn't go away as well, like having that kind of personality. And the more I'm reading about it, the more that I realise that a lot of it is linked to trauma. So I have chronic pain, and that's been suggested to me that is due to trauma, like basically like PTSD. But I was like, no, what are you talking about now, kind of thing. And the more I'm thinking about it and the more I'm reading into it, the more I'm realising that probably is the case, and that addiction and, substance abuse addiction, I've always wondered why I have this feeling of too much is never enough. And, it would explain that and explain a lot of other things. But anyway, I'm going to try and find the one that the video I was talking about. It's not that one. Oh man, I thought I deleted the other ones. I think it might be the shortest one.
His latest book, released in November 2021, is The Least
This is it.
of Us, True Tales of America and Hope in the Time of Fentanyl and Meth. In The Least of Us, he chronicles the emergence of a drug trafficking world producing massive supplies of synthetic drugs, fentanyl and meth, cheaper and deadlier than ever before, marketing to the population of addicts created by the nation's opioid epidemic, which is the subject of his first book. Sam broke the story of how the methamphetamine now produced in Mexico has covered the U.S. and is creating widespread and rapid onset symptoms of schizophrenia, becoming in the process a major driver in the country's homeless problem.
That's what I wanted you to hear. So let's listen to that again.
Symptoms of schizophrenia, becoming in the process a major driver in the country's homeless problem.
widespread symptoms of schizophrenia, and there are a lot of, like, I was like trying to look into mass stabbings and knife crime, homicide with knife, and that has become much more common. And that's not somebody who's if it is linked to this fentanyl crisis, then that's not going to be something that's planned. That's going to be something that's somebody just grabbing a knife. Somebody might start carrying a knife, I guess, if they're feeling so paranoid. But start feeling paranoid about the people you live with. So it could be like that. But also, so I have also looked up, because I accidentally came across, besides this case, I came across other cases. Well, I don't know about this case, if this would be the case with this case. Stick with me here. That there are a lot of multiple overdoses. So like 3 or 4 people overdosing in one house because they've all taken the same drug. Particularly, people in the groups, they snort cocaine, don't they? Partying, teenagers, young adults, and older people. That's something that you would do in a group. And a lot of these drugs, as that guy said, he's researched this massively, and a lot of it's being laced with fentanyl. And meth has become popular again. I thought meth had, died out. But no, that's become popular again. I don't know, but definitely the lacing of coke with fentanyl, that's a thing. And I've said about this in another video before, but that was quite a while ago, and I've probably got new subscribers since then. So I'm going to say it again, that in my hometown, this is only one person, and that's 4. That's a bit more of a tall order. But there's a group of guys, who I didn't associate with them, but small town, you know who. A lot of other people, who they are. This group of lads had all got into drugs at a young age, and heavily into drugs, and they were, I don't know, they weren't people I'd want to hang around with, not because of their drug use, just because of what these guys were like, to be honest. Although obviously I wouldn't want to hang around with a big group of people who use drugs anyway, because that's a weak spot for me. But so all I heard about was that a guy got stabbed and killed, right? One of them, and was found in an alleyway. But then years later, I found out that he'd overdosed, and it was one of the group that had, I don't know if it's one of them or more of them, that basically made it look like a stabbing, dumped him in an alley, and nobody, nobody went down for it. It was never discovered. The police don't know to this day. It was fully covered up. The overdose was covered up because of what the consequences would have been for them. That's just in my little old Middle England. So it's not out of the realms of possibility that people might try and cover this overdoses if if that's what happened. But the thing that makes that less likely is the fact that Zana and it appeared like there was a fight, didn't it? Apparently, they weren't in their beds. I mean, unless the real story was that they were in their beds and then they changed the story, because like we all think that they were wrong when they, you know, the coroner even said that they believed to have died in their sleep, and then it becomes that they fought. But did they need the story to be that they fought? Because then you can't point towards a group overdose if people are fighting. Right, I think I better go inside and carry this on inside.
People using what they think.
However, in this case, this is different, isn't it? Because people survived. So if this is drug related, and this guy, I mean, he could be very tired, to be fair, but his eyes are really dopey looking, aren't they? So there's no mention, there's hardly any articles on it. And another new YouTuber has picked up on it, and I'll put her video in the description. And she's sort of noted that, you know, they're not giving any, there's nothing, no comments about mental health. There's nothing. And I find it very telling that this story, despite it having been even more people who've been stabbed, okay, they weren't killed, but 6 people were stabbed in one house. Why hasn't this been in the news more? And partly it could be the case that it's to do with race. It could be the case that it happened in an area where it's not as shocking for it to happen as, you know, the whole thing with Moscow was apparently that it was this sleepy little town. And you know, it might also be the case, the Idaho 4 case, would it have attracted as much attention? And this is no shade on the victims, but would it have attracted as much attention if they didn't look like they looked? I just want to clarify as well. We can't see what the victims look like in this case, but I do know that at least a few of them were older, like significantly older. And I'm pretty sure they weren't all female. And, you know, I think the attraction with the Idaho 4 case was, you know, these 3 very attractive females. Obviously, Ethan's an attractive young man, but we all know that, you know, with missing persons cases, that females, partly because it's more rare for females to go missing as well, though. But, you know, it's the attractive young females that draw the listeners, the viewers, the readers, unfortunately. And that goes for everybody who, you know, you can blame it on the media, but at the end of the day, it's men and women who are watching and listening and reading and buying it. And also, you know, it's all this white woman syndrome, but I often think it's white knight syndrome, because, you know, when there's a syndrome, you don't call the syndrome after, you call the syndrome after the person that's got the syndrome. And it's not the women who've disappeared who've got the syndrome. It's often people like, and I do like this writer, James Renner. You know, it's men who become obsessed with these cases. So it's a bit of a white knight syndrome, if you ask me. But anyway. And to be fair, we can't pretend that race isn't a factor in this, the amount of publicity that crimes get and how they're dealt with, because this is Shanquella Robinson, who you may have heard of, or you may not have heard of, because I don't think the case has been as well publicised as, and I think I came across it because I was looking up something else actually. But you might have heard of it, but has it had the airtime that case has? Okay, that case has 4 people, but still, and the fact that these people haven't been charged with anything, that's shady, that is, because this woman was attacked naked in front of other people with somebody filming it. She was attacked and killed. I mean, how is nobody been charged for this? So I wasn't going to be honest, I made the video and I hadn't said anything about race, and I thought I can't do that, can't not mention it, because that's just an insult really to see, I'm really scared of saying the wrong thing, and that's kind of why I don't want to, that's kind of why I avoided speaking about it, because I don't want to misrepresent people and say I know how other people feel. But I can imagine that if I was black and I watched this video and there was no mention of race, and that other crime was 6 people that attacked, attacked so badly that they're in hospital, 6 people with a knife, and the parallels with this case, for me not to mention race when almost through the entire video I've got a picture of a black male, that's who you're looking at, then I think I'd probably just turn off the video and just think, yeah, same old. So I thought I had to mention that. So yeah, this video, I did it practically all in one go, but it's a bit chopped up to in my efforts, my rudimentary efforts at editing, but so if anything sounds a bit, hopefully I've got it back in the right order, because I've tried, but it's getting a bit confusing, to be honest, to put it back together. Oh dear. Right, so just to clarify that my point here was that I was pointing to the fact that they are attractive girls, and I do think that's why I think physical attraction has a lot to do with it, regardless of race to an extent, because as you can see, Shanquella is very beautiful, and the only other big case, relatively big case, and that's because a podcast was made, is about Matrice Richardson. And Matrice Richardson, I believe, was a model. So there aren't many cases that come to light about black females being, or just women of colour in general. So thinking about Indigenous women, there's actually been a sort of a cluster. There's been a number of cases of Indigenous women being stabbed to death in Montana, and I know that I'm trying to think of the name of the podcast. I want to say suspicious mouth, subconscious
I can't hear
mouth. Oh, my bad. I can't remember the name of the podcast, but I have shown clips of his videos, and I'll put the video, one of the videos that I'm alluding to, in the description or pin it in the comments. And I can't remember if it's suspicious mouth or subconscious mouth. But he mentions these Montana cases. It probably feels like I'm going off piste a bit here, but I feel like this is important to mention, and I feel like I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I did not. It would be remiss of me not to discuss race and discuss this case in Philadelphia. The fact that it's not very well known. It would be rude not to mention it. So it could be a race thing. It could be, the fact that they live in an area where there's more crime. But this is 6 people. I hope that it would have made some bigger news if they'd actually died. I don't think anybody did. No, nobody died. But, they were... But look, with 2 different knives. So why? It's so, one way there's a few different reasons that it can be connected with drugs, a revenge, people, I've got to show you these videos, really fascinating about things that happened in Manchester, gangland sort of thing, to do with drugs, masked men in the UK. I'm going to put out, I hope I'll try and do it straight after this one so that you can immediately look at that, because that's really interesting. And this YouTube channel, it's all about sort of gangland, but a lot of it's UK and across Europe, the focus. And a lot of talk about stash houses where drugs and money are kept. And people and stash houses being raided, where stuff's stashed, basically. So that's intriguing, I thought. But so this is interesting as well. Investigators allege Holmes went from bedroom to bedroom, stabbing the 6 victims with 2 different knives that they described as kitchen knives. And the time frame that they've given us for the Idaho 4 murders, and at first they're saying that they're stabbed in their beds, is making it sound like, well, but then again, at first they weren't giving us that time frame, but if you believe it happened in this quick succession, then it's to believe either to believe that the perpetrator was going in basically in a sort of with the aim of just killing these people, but not deriving. If you're expected to believe that this is this stalker, then this person's just trying to take out people, like it's almost like executing people. And well, then the motive's got to be different, because if it's a stalker's type thing, where they're trying to make us believe it's this Ted Bundy type person, there's a lot of problems with that. But one of the biggest problems is that only right at the end did Ted Bundy do some things where he sort of went from room to room. He'd never done that before. This was, he got this long history prior to that. And you could argue that we don't know this long history but he didn't just have a history, he had a history of entering houses as well. So serial killers, if it's being characterized in that sense, it doesn't make any sense because in most cases they wouldn't. There are some cases where serial killers enter somebody else's house, but a lot of cases people are abducted and taken to somewhere where the serial killer has more control over the situation, not to a situation where they don't have any control. You know, serial killers are all about control, and then they're almost like an animal playing with their prey. They want to have as much time as they can with their victim. So this just doesn't fit with that. I mean, the Idaho 4 case just doesn't fit with that. And obviously this isn't that kind of thing either. And this is seemingly different because apparently it was a family member. But we've been sort of told that it happened really quickly, and the only other explanation is that it was interrupted, but then that doesn't explain other things. And if it's interrupted and there's this big fight, why didn't Dylan hear any of it? And if he's not got any, if he's apparently,
what am I doing, Marla?
As far as we know, the perpetrator has got away without taking anything away with him in terms of DNA, then people are speculating that he's wearing this suit, this hazmat suit or whatever. Well, that doesn't make sense either, because obviously Dylan didn't see him wearing something like that, although apparently he was wearing a mask. And you'd have to then put the suit would then have to be removed and put into a bag, and that would take up even more time, and you'd have to do it carefully. And if there was this fight, wouldn't the suit have got ripped? None of it fits, does it? But this is just interesting how they've said it seemed that this guy went from room to room stabbing people. It would be really interesting to get more information on this. I'm not sure how you can do that until you can put in a FOIA request, but then that wouldn't be until after the trial and after the conviction. So, 2 men who were stabbed during the incident. There's 2 men. There's this one guy, but he's stabbed 2 men. I'd like to know the age of everybody, as it's given us some ages below. Who were stabbed during the incident, suffered various wounds throughout their bodies and were placed in stable condition. That's strange. They'd suffered various wounds throughout their body and were placed in stable condition. That sounds very strange. A 55-year-old woman was stabbed once in the left arm and was listed in stable condition at Temple University Hospital. A 49-year-old woman remains in critical condition after suffering stab wounds to the head and neck during the incident. So there's 4 women and 2 guys. Look, so next 2 other women, aged 30 and 32. Look how old these people were also listed, and they all living in the house together. This is weird. But also listed in critical condition after they suffered multiple stab wounds. And that's it. And there's just not much. There's another article here. 30-year-old man faces numerous charges, including attempted murder, after Philadelphia police say he stabbed 6 of his family members as they slept in their Kensington home. happened on February the 11th. Officers arrived at the home to find 6 people stabbed and Holmes with 2 knives. Who stabs people with 2 knives? Authorities said although I think one of the knives did actually break. But then what are you going to... Did he have the spare on him? Like, or just in case that broke? Like, what? This doesn't make... I don't know. Authorities said some of the victims were stabbed in the arms, forehead and back. All victims are ages are between 26 and 46. Well, not according to the previous article, which says a woman was 55. Investigators believe all the victims were stabbed while in their beds. Holmes is charged with attempt... I'd like to know what time it happened at. I mean, this is like... what the... Yeah, it's like the... a bit like the DeFeo murders. So, you know, the Amityville Horror is based on an actual murder that occurred, and apparently this guy, Ronald DeFeo Jr., was the sole perpetrator of the murder of his entire family. But, you know, they were little kids involved in this. This is absolutely fascinating case. I've read a couple of books on this. But, I think, were they all shot? 3 a.m. in the morning. The children had all been killed by single shots. I mean, this sounds like a hit, really. It just sounds like they left, like he was a drug user. It just sounds like it was a hit and he was left as the only survivor. Because the thing is, then that person, the survivor, is left with the choice of going to prison, like, you know, or trying to claim that it was some other people, but they probably they know that they probably face a worse fate than going to prison if they tried to grass these people up. Yeah, that's a fascinating case. Yeah, he was known as Butch DeFeo. I wonder if it says it in popular culture. Trying to find, not the Amityville, the actual book on, not the ghost side of it. This is the book that I was talking about. The Night the DeFeos Died, Reinvestigating the Amityville Murders. Yeah, I found that really interesting. By Rick Osuna, I think his name is. Oh yeah, there is. Rick Osuna. Yeah, that's interesting. But then with this case, there's survivors. So, was it this guy? Like, and if so, why? And if not, could it have been all to do with drugs and that these people would be too scared to tell the authorities who was really at the who was really responsible? Because, you know, if these people can come into their home and stab 6 of them, you're going to be terrified of them. Have we got another Patsy on our hands? I'd like to see more interest in this case. I'd like to see, you know, people who've got much more of a following than me covering this case. So perhaps some of my subscribers might suggest this case, and I will as well, to some of the bigger YouTubers. I'd really like to see this covered. I know I've seen Sergeant Friday in the comments. Love Sergeant Friday. He's often on a sort of panel on Thou Shalt Not Kill, Rory. And he has makes some really insightful comments. So speak with Rory, get him to cover it, Sergeant Friday. Bubbly Waters, cover this case. Let's find out some more about this. This is intriguing, and it's a crying shame that there's only a few articles about it. And why is this? Is it because of demographics, which is bad enough, but is it because of something more? Do investigators really know what's going on here, if there is, more to it? So I'd like to hear your opinions as well. That's it for now, folks.